Welcome to Rock Docs. This is David Lizerbram. This episode is an interview that my co-host Andrew Keatts and I conducted with N.C. Winters. N.C. is an artist, a fine artist. He's mostly known in the music world for creating posters for rock shows. So if you go to a concert and you see those super cool, beautiful, collectible posters, NC's one of the people who makes those. He's worked with bands, huge bands like Metallica, Nine Inch Nails, Primus, Dave Matthews Band, Dead and Company, and many more, as you'll hear him talk about. And it's just kind of an interesting world of collectors and a little bit of drama. Nothing too crazy, but, just like any subculture, there's going to be some interesting twists and things that are occasionally controversial and so forth. NC was very open and, not blowing anybody up here, but he definitely has seen a lot of stuff in that space and has a lot of thoughts about it. He also is known worldwide, renowned for being the designer of the logo for this very podcast, Rock Docs. So if you enjoy staring at our beautiful art every Tuesday in your podcast feed, you can thank NC. It was really nice of him to take time out of his professional work designing posters for Metallica and Nine Inch Nails to design our little podcast logo, and we love it, and we really appreciate it, and we appreciate him coming on. He gets to his plugs later on, but just to get him up front, he's at NC Winters Art on Instagram and so forth. You can see his art there. We'll share some of his art on our social as well. And also, he has kind of a cool little community going on Facebook, Facebook groups, and it's called Fans of NC Winters. Just go on Facebook, look up the group, Fans of NC Winters. That's the letter N, the letter C, and then Winters. You can check out all of his stuff there, engage with his community, and of course, we certainly encourage you to purchase his art, support artists. This is a way for musicians to make money in a challenging economic time for musicians as that industry changes, and also to support artists who are doing really interesting creative work. To find out about artists whose work you might not know about, and to kind of celebrate bands and music and all the kind of culture around it. Anyway, NC was super nice. Thanks a lot for doing this, NC. We love you. This was great. Of course, you can check us out at Rock Docs Pod on Instagram and Twitter. And now here is our interview with the great NC Winters. Hi, welcome to Rock Docs. This is David Lizerbram here with my host,
Andrew Keatts.
And we're here with a very special guest, NC Winters. Say hi, NC.
Hi, NC. How are you, bud?
Yeah. NC Winters is worldwide most well known for having designed the logo for Rock Docs.
That's my
That's pretty much that's the pinnacle. But when he's not doing that, he's also a professional fine artist, and I actually did an interview with you, NC, years ago, where you kind of talked about your background, a lot of other things. So maybe we'll link to that or just tell people to check that out. It was on my old podcast, Products in the Mind. But yeah, we wanted to bring NC on, Andy and I, just to kind of talk about his career and the things he's been doing in the world of rock posters, which is like kind of a whole niche subculture phenomenon that I don't really know a whole lot about. And I thought people would kind of I thought people would find it interesting. I don't know. So you want to just kind of like tell us a little bit about the world of music posters and how you got involved with it?
It's funny. Oh, and we have airplanes overhead. It's funny because I sort of stumbled into it accidentally and have yet to ever feel totally comfortable and like a member of the scene, though I've done several by now. So it always feels weird to ever attempt to talk with any kind of authority. So I'll just speak to my own experience. Zoltron of Zoltron fame reached out to me. I was talking to some friends online, and he basically said, "Hey, are you interested in doing a gig poster? I like your work. I see you do screen print work." And I said, "Absolutely, that'd be a blast." And he was incredibly generous and took me under his wing. and started me off with Primus. And Primus is looking around the studio, and there's Primus posters mostly for what I've done. And he said, "Go crazy, go wild, don't hold back. Be weird, embrace weird." And I did a bunch of research about what was out there and overthought it, of course. And just he was extremely generous with information and guidance. And I just went for it, and they kind of took off, and have been great ever since. I honestly, I'm not sure what I did right or wrong, but I just treated them like art posters, and just went for it, and it seems to have paid off.
Okay, well, and so like, were you as an artist who hadn't been working on concert posters, gig posters yet, was it something you paid attention to? Was it something you were into? Was it how much of an introduction was it to that world and sort of the way people do things business wise or artistically?
So I knew a fair number of people who were in the scene, just sort of through shared other poster work, and just it's a small community.
Yeah.
So I had been paying attention. I thought they were cool. It didn't necessarily seem like something that I was gonna drift into or was on the radar. But I was familiar with several different artists' work over the years, just having been friends with them in other ways, through conventions, through Comic-Con, Designer Con. Some of them were involved in the toy community, in the graffiti community, the fine art community. We kind of all overlap in a lot of different ways. And there are certainly artists from other, they had done movie posters or gallery work that I had become friends with over the years. So I had an eye on it. Even though the more you sort of tease at that thread, the more you uncover of other artists that you've never heard of. So I wasn't a collector. I still don't really go to shows. But I loved the art of them. So I was aware. I was watching what people were putting out. It sort of seemed like a separate world that I didn't have access into. It looked like it could be fun. And I think when I really started wanting to look at it as something to pursue, it sort of happened organically, and I lucked out. And then it was like, as I was getting really into it, I can't even remember exactly how it happened. I think I was talking to, I think Zombie Yeti was someone I was talking to online. He asked if I had any interest, and I think he passed me on to Zoltron. And since then, I've tried to be involved and pay attention to what's going on, and chat with other artists. But I'd be lying if I said I was super into the scene and paying attention and collecting and diligently on the poster sites. I kind of fell into it like everything else, and became better friends with the artists, and just sort of made my own way, and just decided to do things differently with the guidance I had, and just sort of wing it. So
Yeah,
a little bit, not so much.
yeah. And so for you, how relevant or how specific is the music of the band for a given a given poster? Do you conceptually try to attach the work to whatever it is that they do musically, and like how much do you even need to know or care about a band to do a poster for them?
It's a really good question, and I frankly struggle with that every time, because I'm of several minds, and one of them is, this is a piece of illustration, this is communicating an idea, this is communicating the band, what the band's about, the band's aesthetic, the fans, what the music's about, how do I encapsulate the band? But on the other hand, that becomes overthought and limiting for me. I'm not good at that. And it tends to make a forced, constrained poster that feels, because what do you land on, right? Like what is the nature of what Primus is about, or Dave Matthews Band, or Metallica, or Nine Inch Nails, or like it's going to be my interpretation anyway. And I do a ton of research about what has been done, just to sort of go, okay, what can I get away with? Where can I push it? What's the vibe? What's going to be totally out in left field, good, bad, or otherwise? Like, I don't want to rehash old ideas, but I also don't want to be so out in the middle of nowhere that there's no place to land. So it's kind of this weird amalgamation of what is the vibe of the band and the music, what is the vibe of what I've seen graphically. 311, like there's a lot of like aliens is kind of a motif, and Primus is like you can get away with a lot of really weird. Nine Inch Nails has a very darker, grittier, edgier style. Metallica, very edgy and So Dave Matthews Band is a little softer. But then again, when all of these are not, like you see perfect many examples where it goes the other direction. Ken Taylor is an amazing artist who I love, a really nice guy too, who will often flip flop what's expected for like what you think you can get away with for that band or what's going to work. So at the end of the day, I go with the images I want to make has been my safest sort of prima donna move to go. What's the art that's on my mind? Where am I at creatively? What am I gonna? As my wife reminds me, what am I gonna enjoy making and not get sick of halfway through? Because I'm trying to sort of fit an idea of what's supposed to work. Because every time that happens, I'm excited about the job, and then I hate the job halfway through because I've shoehorned myself into something I don't want to do. So I try to make it at the end of the day something I just want to draw, something that I think is going to fit for the band, an image maybe I had already that fits for that band or something that off the cuff. And I feel like I've never nailed it. I feel like some bands want the location to inspire the art. I'm terrible at that. And I strongly go, please don't make me do that because you will get a bad poster because I'm a bad designer. I'm not a good communicator that way. I'm kind of an artist first, and it feels very pretentious, but if you're coming to me for work, I always say, here's what I've done. If you like what I've done, it comes from me just doing my own thing. So it's not a good answer, but it's how I do it.
And I mean, you mentioned tons of huge artists that you've worked with, having been in this world. Is it something where do you ever think like, wow, I really love this artist, I would love to work with them, or their people, or just kind of reflect their music? Or is it just they come to you, like Primus or whoever's people say like, okay, NC, you're up next? How does that work in terms of landing the artist or the work?
The right, correct, best answer is that I reach out to the artists that I most want to work with. I haven't done that yet.
Maybe try that.
I need to try that. And then, it's funny, this year is the year where I'm taking a bit of a break from gig posters because I tend to fall into all that come in. And then I get like, oh, I'm doing nothing but posters, which I love. But again, it's a lot of design. I need to reach out to, generally the bands contact me or their merch people contact me, people I've worked with a lot. We have a good relationship. They're like, hey, are you available for this poster? Yes, same terms. Yes, same terms. We go over by now it's kind of old hat with getting all the contract. David, as you know, you helped me out with that. Locked in early on to the point where there isn't one. It's by now word of mouth, and that's worked well. And I'll reach out with some new bands or that reach out to me, and I'll try them out and go, okay, this didn't really land. So in terms of sales or something, but generally I say yes or no depending on my schedule to who comes to me, which is not a good way to do business. My plan is to reach out more to bands that I want to do more with, but there are gatekeepers and there are merch people and there are certain we only work this way, or these are the only terms that we will do. And there are a couple of bands that I won't name that it's like, I mean, I love to do a poster for them, but it's probably never going to happen unless I'm willing and have time to just not make any money or have it be something where I know I'm going to be very, boxed in, but I can just check that off as, oh my God, I got to do a poster for. So as I get older though, and busier, more and more, I'm like, these are my terms. If you can't see you, gotta go. So
yeah.
I don't know if that's better time management or if that's just becoming more fancy in my ways.
Yeah. I'm interested in the artist perspective on sort of the hyper collector culture around posters. There's a few bands I follow where like limited edition prints for a given show will, sort of hours before the show, people will line up and grab one, and often you'll see those posted on resale sites like before the show has even concluded for for many times more than the cost of the poster initially. Sort of all that stuff that happens after you've finished the work and moved on. Do you have any sort of relationship with that? What's the artist's perspective on sort of hype beast culture around tour posters?
That's a whole other episode we could do just about that topic.
It's a very fraught topic on the consumer side. So I'm interested in what the artist side is.
Like, I almost want to know which band specifically you're talking about, because even within that, it depends on the band.
So I'm very into like jam bands. So like Fish and Train Anastasia Band and like Goose
Okay.
all have a very established, like there's like people who are like tour, gig poster people within that world, and there's other people who don't really necessarily care. There's all these niches within niches, but yeah, like I there was Fish had like a 5-day run in Mexico recently, and they had one special release for the run at this like resort, and apparently people were lined up for like 15 hours before the poster release during their supposed like Mexican vacation. It was a hot topic in Fish fan circles.
Now, they were lined up for at the merch tent or for
At,
the show to open.
for the merch tent,
Yeah.
because the whole show is like at one resort, so it's just like for 5 days. So it was like one day at like noon one day they opened the merch tent for this run, and I guess people were lined up from like midnight the night before.
Mexico?
Yeah, Riviera Maya.
I'm trying to look through my email. I got a Riviera Maya Mexico tour show. I don't know if it's a popular destination. A lot of bands go there, but
Yeah, like Dave goes there, Dave Matthews goes there, Fish goes there, Widespread
Doesn't
Panic,
Wilco? I think Wilco does it.
Wilco.
Yeah,
yeah,
Dead
I
and
think I
Company.
turned one down because I was
Yeah.
like, I don't. Can I sell a tour poster for Mexico? Also,
Yeah.
it was like a weird. Yeah, okay. I didn't get the call for Fish, but um, I am very aware of that phenomenon, and it comes up a lot. There's a group that I have a Facebook group that talks about those sorts of things. I'm in a lot of the other different band Facebook poster groups that try to or that hey, I'm trying to get this. Can you PB for me? Can you poster buddy for me? So I see a lot of the drama. I see it's part of my release and transparency schedule when I'm releasing a print specifically, is to go, listen, I know this drama exists, to the point where I will have videos in my group and go, hey, and they're like, well, you're overthinking this, and I go, that's sort of my brand, but I know that there's flipper culture. I know that there's people who buy a whole box of posters before the show opens. I know that there's not even back alley deals, but front handshake deals with certain collectors and merch vendors, where I'll pay you this much in cash, and you don't have to stand in line shilling posters. Here's more than it's worth. Go have a beer, and it's just part of the world. It exists. I try to do my best to not add to the frustration. I also have limits by bands, by how many posters I can make. It's frustrating for me because people will come yell at me for my poster that they got to the show an hour early that is now sold out, and I literally have no say in that. It's not me. And then but when I make my posters, I can't just make enough for everybody. It's part of the band's point, because there's the band's posters that they sell for merch, and then there's mine, and they can cannibalize each other. Mine are often signed, and the band posters are not signed by the artist, but they can be signed by the band. Different bands have different rules, so it's a frustrating phenomenon that is part of the culture. And at the end of the day, my takeaway has to be, it exists because these things have value, because the collectors want them, which is a good sign. But it, of course, will create and cause people trying to game the system or buy them all or put them on eBay, and we call them flippers. Zoltron, who got me on board, he has a whole sticker like "Don't be a flipper," comes with all of his posters. But flipping also happens, and I'm not going to say never do it. If you're buying all of these posters and never selling any of them, like, how do you have that much storage? And also people who want them, or I know that they have a life of their own where people buy and trade with each other, and there's community there, which I think is cool. But for those that go early just to buy them all out, yeah, it's gross. But
what are you gonna do?
It's part of it, it sucks.
Yeah.
And in terms of the like the kind of culture around it, like, are most people who are like really collectors, like, are they mostly collectors because of the bands, or are there a lot of people that are just like, if NC puts out a poster, like, it doesn't matter if I'm not a huge fan of Primus, like, I'm into your work, or is it a little combination?
All of it is a combo in my experience. There are like, I will only buy a poster for a show I went to. I will never buy a poster or of a band I hate. Even if it's my favorite artist, please make an art print, and then I will buy it. I will buy
An art print means like it's just the art without the like name of the band and location and stuff like that.
Right. Like a lot of artists, and a big part of what you do as an artist trying to make the most money out of a lot of time and hours on a piece is that you create the work or rework the work so that you can release an art print, because as prints have taken the turn into gig posters used to be just like informative, like, right? It was just like band name, type, maybe a graphic, and it turned into art prints. And I went all in on just art prints. I was a gallery artist, so I just went all in on art prints because people were like, "There's no money in gig posters. Why are you getting into it?" I did it for years. I never made anything. I was like, "Well, I'm going to treat it like an art poster, like an art print." And everyone was like, "Well, that's insane. Like you shouldn't spend that much time on a gig poster." And I was like, I'm going to do it." So I made everyone with the idea of it being an art print. So specifically, it's almost an art print first, or it's designed that it will be as if I released an art print. So a lot of mine are ready to go for art prints, and knowing that I have a lot of prints that I'm like working on to try to get made into art print still, because there's new projects. So yeah, absolutely. The poster, the art print is basically the poster either reworked to have the type removed, or sometimes people will just put a layer of type on top and then leave that plate off. I generally don't like to do that. I make it harder for myself. So again, there's the people who only collect from a show that they go to, won't hang or own a piece of art, no matter how great it is, if it's a band that they hate. People who will buy every print, I think, by an artist. I don't know if I have any of those. It's every possible combo of there is no monolith in the poster community that I know of.
Yeah. It's fascinating. What about, do you ever contract directly with venues rather than bands? Is there ever like a venue just decides they want to have a relationship with you?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I know more merch people will say, "Hey, we want to, your posters sell out. We want to do a poster that's like a commemorative run, or it's a special one-off." Or, a lot of times it's like, "Can you also do the VIP poster that we're doing?" Never worked with the venue specifically. I've had more offers for like, not Coachella, but like a festival. "Can you do our festival poster?" And part of my thinking a lot of time is like, because again, I got to think about, there's not a lot of money that I receive as part of the gig. My money is made on the back end of selling my copies and copies that I hand embellish and my variants. So I have to think, am I going to be able to resell a venue print or a big, 50 bands on their print? And is there going to be room for the art? So I haven't worked with any venues directly, but I've had offers. I haven't taken any yet.
So that's interesting what you just said there. So you're the part that makes this financially valuable for you is selling your allotment of the run, not whatever sort of upfront relationship with the band. The commission itself doesn't necessarily pay as much as the back end variants and stuff.
This is an interesting topic, because short answer is yes. I know of a lot of artists, and I have evolved my thinking over this. When I first got in, and a lot of artists that I know are like, the band's going to pay a couple $1,000 as the art fee for all of these posters, and you'll get a handful. That's not worth it. And I go, I agree. To me, that's not worth how much time I put into them. I mean, for people who can work tighter and faster than I can, awesome. And whatever is worth to you is fine for you. I'm not pissing on any of that. But for me, how much time I put into them, again, as art prints, I will go keep the fee. And I never know the right fee. And I've talked to a bunch of artists, and it's kind of all over the place. And I go, instead, pay that fee towards some printing costs for me to have more posters to sell on my site. And, I very strongly ask for a number of variants in different colors and foils, and the same art to be used in multiple different formats, maybe on a special stock or maybe in a different colorway that I can sell. It's more overhead work for me, something else I'm working on, but I know I can make more money selling those prints on my site than the pittance design fee that I'm going to, it's not worth it to me. But a lot of artists, and I kind of was one for a while. It's like, wait, so basically I'm doing work for free with the hopes that I can sell the prints. And I go, yeah, but I am fortunate enough, have established enough that I will usually sell them all out. Not always. I have the prints on the site now. That becomes worth it for me. And even if I don't sell out, I can hand embellish, or I can bring them to conventions. Or if I have back stock, I made enough that covers what I would have been paid in cash. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. But so that brings us back then. That means the secondary market, the flipper market, really does undermine you. You're then, really having to share market space with those people who are, in some ways they're selling against you, because a would-be buyer could either go to your site and buy from you, or this person who bought one at the show and is selling it at a markup. It's sort of competition, that it's sort of interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting because I should stop playing with the function. It's interesting because there's a lot of different mindsets about this, and in a way, you're absolutely right that uh, you're someone's fishing out of both are in one pond.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and this is what gets very, very tricky, is that the secondary market exists for people to get access to the posters that are in demand.
Mm-hmm.
If it's the band posters, I can't claim credit. I get the band has signed those; those are special. If it's the poster because of the art, which I make in this case, another artist, I can go there after my work and the band, and it's or the rare, or this was for a special. And I mean, a lot of people's like, I was at that concert, I have to have this poster. Someone else is like, I bought 5 of these, I'm going to resell them. People are like, I couldn't get them at the show. God, please let me get one. And I've heard from a lot of people that say the secondary market allows people who couldn't get one to get one, with the understanding that they have to pay the premium price. And that's how some people make their entire living, is I know people who go to conventions, they buy stuff, come home, secondary market. It's the Gary V Amazon resale market.
Yeah.
That exists. And to yell at that is like yelling at the rain. It's just, how much time do you have? At the same time, that also ups my value of my work, right? If my work's hard to get, if it's in demand, if it goes on eBay for a bunch of money, like that means that the new work I release, people want to jump on it. I'm going to sell out. There is always the idea that someone else is making a lot more money off my hard-earned work. But at the same time, how much time do you have, once again? And I'm never going to get all of those dollars. Like if I just took all my prints and they're going on eBay, people wouldn't do it. Or it would devalue what I sell, because now I would be raising the base price. So those people are competing with me. Generally, I try to cultivate the people who are on my newsletter, my list, and my groups to go, hey, these are my sales when I'm selling them. It's the best price. And then I got to deal with like bots and people trying to game the system. And I just wiped out an entire network of 20 names all under one collective of buyers and flippers that I had to.
Geez.
It's like, now I have to put resources into that, but how many? It's tricky. So the secondary market can take from me, but also help support the value and demand for what I do. And also, there are people who are like, don't shit all over this and shut it down every way you can, because some of us will never get a print otherwise. Yeah. Some of us aren't fast enough on the drops. Some of us can't compete with it. So it's the ecosystem, and a lot of people can think of it that way. For me, it sort of sets you up to always be angry at something that has to exist anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So 2 kind of related questions, I guess, in terms of the workflow is, number one, like, do you typically like submit a rough draft and get it approved, or some ideas? Like, how does that work? And also, like, you talked about the time. I mean, like, for you, since your works are painted and, so detailed, how much time do like goes into a typical gig poster that you're doing in terms of your time? Probably a lot, but generally speaking.
It's tricky, and I really someday want to, since I do more digitally, there's probably a better way to track that amount of time. It completely varies. The last few years have been almost completely digital. So I've gotten away from inking and scanning in and painting, because it just becomes too many steps, and it's just, I can take the iPad wherever I go. You're asking about
The
time
workflow,
commitment.
like do you submit things and get
Sorry, thank you.
approved, and then the total time? Yeah.
So my general thing always, and I was just talking to my wife about this the other day. I feel like I've never learned the proper way. I just have the way I've done it, and it's just by now people are like, "Oh, that's how it's done." It's like that's how I do it, which is I will submit a very rough sketch, very rough, because I've found that I will either not submit one or I'll submit one that's half done, and then if there's changes, they're like, "This is I feel so terrible. You've done all this work, which is why you submit a rough." But again, I a lot of so many of my works are I talk about this. I think I talked about this with you, are like a seed that is going to grow into something that I don't know what it is yet. So that idea of my wife said, make something that you're not going to hate in a month. It takes about a month to do. I submit a rough sketch. I have to keep it rough because if I don't, and they're like, okay, this is what you submitted. It better look like this because we signed off on it. It becomes hamstringy, and it's probably all in my own head. Like I don't want to bait and switch them. And a lot of times over the years, I've submitted a sketch, and then like 2 days later, I'm like, oh my gosh, here's a better sketch. And they go, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Scratch that one. Hide the best sketch here. And they're like, approved. Great. Yes. Okay. You're gonna get time to get this done. Like you scatterbrain. And so I'm at the point where I go, listen, here's the posters I've done. Here's the level of sketch everybody gets. No one has ever complained. If there's something drastically not good or wrong, or like one person was like, I love this. It looks exactly like this one that was done before. And I looked and I was like, oh my God, I must have subconsciously seen it or missed it, but I cannot release this. It's too similar. Or very rare things where they're like, very, very idiosyncratic things where like this subject is something the band is avoiding right now, or they're trying to get away from this, or they just had 5 in a row. Like, just can we? And I'm like, I get it. And they're very cool about it. And I'm like, fine, we love it. Go full steam. So I submit a very rough sketch. They're like, fine, do your thing, do your NC thing. We know how this is going to look like. It's a pencil sketch. Like it's rough and like, and new bands, that's harder to sort of sell them on. Other bands are like, great, like see you. It's not okay. Go crazy. And then I at the end go, when it's like 3/4, I go, I need you to double check type because I'm too close to it. I need you to double check the venue, the gig, the name. Is it theater, TER or TRE? Is it a weird Roman spelling? Is it the Dave Matthews Band? No, it's Dave Matthews Band, but like, is the venue, is the important? Like, triple check my spelling, and then I will send another email a week later, confirmed or otherwise, to go, please check it again, because like last minute changes are a nightmare, especially because I do a lot of handwritten type. And then it's like, but I make it clear, like, here's sort of one round of where I'm at. Once you sign off, unless it's drastic, there's no changes. Like, I'm just letting you know where I'm at, unless, I added, something looks like a penis in there or something, like, and I get it. I'm like, oh God, I didn't see it. Thank you. But then I go, and here's your final poster. Like, that's it. So they have very little input on that. It's just how I work. And I want them to double check spelling, but yeah, and then I spend a ton of time on them, way too much time per hour. It's probably not a very great wage for how much time I spend. And it usually works where I will do like a sketch, and then I go, oh God, where was I going with that? Or I'll do half of it in a day or in one sitting, and then the other half takes weeks and weeks and weeks of like, a day's worth of noodling, a 10th of it, and then another day's work of noodling, a 15th of it, and then it's just like, the back half is always the worst. Those are the worst.
Well, I think last thing I want to ask you though about is music documentaries. The subject, the titular subject of this podcast of ours.
That would be good.
So what, like, do you what's your relationship with music documentaries? Do you, any that stick out to you? That you watch them much?
I was gonna say the one I've seen, but that's not true now. I watched the Beatles one, which was incredibly compelling, and I'm sure you guys have done deep pockets on that. I watched the Grateful Dead one when I was doing a Grateful Dead poster, and was that the first one? Actually, I like documentaries. I've probably seen more music documentaries than I've seen concerts, which is probably an embarrassing statement, but I should go to more live music, but I'm a nerd and I don't leave the house, and I like documentaries and old man as engineer as entertainment. So I've seen the Grateful Dead one. I've seen the Beatles one. I think there have to have been a few others that I've seen by now. I find them interesting. The Grateful Dead one, I wasn't a Grateful Dead fan. I didn't know much about the Grateful Dead. The documentary was amazing. The Beatles, I know of, really have major gaps in my musical knowledge about the Beatles. The documentary was incredibly fascinating and like probably more interesting than a lot of their music. Watching them make it as a creative being, like they're sketching, they're jamming, they're having artistic like battle. George is pissed that no one's listening to him. It's the Paul and John like they're very fascinating. I'm sure I'm missing some. If you guys have suggestions, I want to hear some.
You named two winners. I got to say you're in the Mount Rushmore in my opinion with those two. So
what do I also have to check out? I've been behind on your guys' podcast. What do I need to make sure in that vein I don't miss?
You know what's one that I would recommend is Dig, D-I-G with an exclamation mark. It's Brian Jonestown Massacre primarily. It's an old classic, a surreal trip into into the mind of a very interesting guy.
Maybe wait till the kid goes to sleep to watch that one. It's a lot of drugs, sex, rock and roll, violence, everything you want.
I'm happy to show some, but yeah.
Well, yeah. What's that? Yeah. I mean, the Velvet Underground one that came out last year, you might find interesting because it's very much about the kind of art scene in the 60s that gave birth to them, even more so than it's about the band. It's about, the visual artists that they were inspired by and they were working with, as well as,
Warhol
music.
Them?
Yeah, yes. Warhol, as well
Warhol's
as a lot Warhol's
main
a main
character of the movie, basically.
So to the extent that you're interested in kind of art history around that time, the 60s, everything, music, poetry, whatever, that gives birth to, kind of a creative enterprise, I think you might kind of vibe on that one.
I realized that one of my favorite things my wife got me for Christmas was Masterclass. And I did listen to I watched the Tom Morello one with my kid, where he's like, here's how you make a song. Blah, blah, blah. Add this. Blah, blah. You just made a song. Don't overthink it. I was like, that's rad. I watched the Hans Zimmer one. Incredible. There's a great, amazing Danny Elfman one. Those are all, God, I was opening up my Masterclass. Those I've listened to and watched. I'm in the middle of the Deadmau5 one.
Nice.
Also very differently interesting. Any of those are interesting. There's a Yo-Yo Ma one I think I watched.
Those are kind of like music documentaries in their old way, I guess. I haven't checked out Masterclass.
Less visual. Some of them are super visual, but those are the closest I think that I've done the most.
Great.
So final thing before we let you go. So are there any of the gig posters that you've worked on that you like are your particular favorites? Just you really like the work, or you kind of vibe on it, or are they all just beautiful like your children? You can't choose.
Oh no, there are children that I hate. No, I have one kid.
Only one kid, so
they're absolutely different. My first love will always be doing posters for Primus because that was how I started. That was how, when I was asking Z, like, where do I go? Do I want to make it, like the artist overthinking of like, do I cater? What's going to sell? And he's like, dude, go nuts. Just don't hold back. Be weird. Embrace weird. And I was like, okay. And I think that's what made it so like, okay, this is going to work. I did my favorite, I went weird and people loved it and was like, yes. So Primus has a deep love because of that, for making the posters and my history. And then the next is easily 9 Inch Nails. It's one of my favorite bands, and I get to be really dark. I get to be it's my favorite music of the bands that I've done. So there's very much a different vibe that very much overlaps with who I am, because there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, I'm not going to put that out there because that's too weird. That's too much. So 9 Inch Nails, and then a deep love of Primus. I do a lot of Dave Matthews Band posters because they also sell super well. I maybe shouldn't say that part, but I love being able to do something softer there. But out of all of those, I love the weirdness of Primus, and then the deep personal resonance of 9 Inch Nails the most, to be able to push. And I've done 2, and I want to do more, to be able to do dark and odd and weird. So that's probably 9 Inch Nails and Primus.
Right.
Awesome. Well, check out MC stuff. I would definitely recommend. It's at NC Winners Art on Instagram. Is that right? At NC Winners Art. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yes, that's correct. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's definitely the one. Because if you're tired of the social media hellscape and you want to see something on social media that's like actually beautiful and inspiring and cool, and if you like music, this is gonna hit you right in that spot. Check it out. You've got a few followers on there, but definitely check it out. And yeah, or if you're kind of interested in getting into the world of poster art, or fine arts in general, and sees your guide. He's an incredible, and it was so nice of you to come on and not only to chat with us, but also to do the logo for our podcast, which promises a quality that I hope we someday will deliver.
Oh no, it was a blast to do. Thanks for having me. I've been wanting to do something for you forever, and that was another one where I overthought, and I was like, it's for the David show, and I don't, I want to make it about posters, but not make it too weird. The classic overthink. Can I plug something really quick?
Plug, yeah, plug.
There is a group page on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/fans of NC Winners, which I cringe at every time. I didn't make the group, but there's a lot of really devoted collectors, and they talk gig posters, and there's links. That is more of a community than even Instagram based on what I do. I think it's invite, but you just say, hey, I want to join. But that's a good way if you're especially if you're into the gig poster aspect. There's a lot of affiliated groups and people who are involved in other online gig poster collector groups. David, I think you're in that group.
I'll check
but
it
if
out,
not,
yeah.
like that's a place to check out my stuff that's more community based.
Right.
Love it. Thanks so much for doing this. Yeah, we'll include links, all that stuff, and yeah, we're looking forward to more what you're doing down the road. Thanks a lot, NC.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, guys.